Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Grace of a Military Child and Life podcast. Military families are not like your traditional family. They are strong, brave, resilient, and some of the most incredible people I know. My name is Gracie, a U.S. Army brat, and I am your host. I am honored to be able to give military family members like myself a place for them to share their stories and experiences in the military life. Stay tuned for this week's guest. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Grace of Military Child and Life. Today, I'm here with Kiara, who is both a military child and a military spouse. So welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you. So tell me what it was like, growing up in the military, being part of a military family, being a military spouse, everything.
So I feel like it was very different being a military child versus a military spouse. My stepdad was in the Navy and he joined when I was pretty young. And I went to a lot of different middle schools and went to high school in Guam. And I never thought that I'd want to marry someone in the military because I was an only child at the time. So it was really hard adjusting to all of the different schools and moves and all of that. But I met my husband and now I actually love being a military spouse. It has a lot of challenges, but I think overall it's a really great life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, literally you've lived all around the world, being both a child and a spouse, moving so many times it's challenging, but, it is really rewarding in the end of it.
It really is. Yeah. We love to travel and we love to make new friends and see new places. And we're able to do that. And when, if my husband had a different job, we might not be able to see all of these different places and meet all of these people. But it definitely has a lot of challenges too.
Yeah, it's definitely so much fun to be able to, if you love to travel, if you love to meet new people, if you love to experience new cultures and everything, this is definitely the lifestyle for you. Like you said, you can't really do this with many other careers, with many other jobs. It's hard to be able to do that. And especially, if you get the chance to be stationed in Europe, I've never been there, but, I've heard it's so easy to just hop on a train and go somewhere, and then literally explore so many different parts of just this country alone.
I know. So we had orders to Germany in 2019 and we were getting ready to move there and I was preparing to have my son there. And then the height of COVID started in 2020 and all of our orders got canceled and we were stuck. And my husband ended up going a different career path. So we never made it to Germany, but we're hoping to eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, now that your son's a little older, it might be fun, for him to be over there at a little bit of an older age where he'd remember it rather than being an infant.
Yeah, we'd love to. Well, we can. Hopefully we'll make it to Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so what was it like being in Guam for you?
Looking back now, it feels like it didn't even happen. But it was an interesting experience. I was there for almost 5 years. And I was, I think it was good that I went to one high school and it didn't have to move around for high school.
Right.
But at the same time, it was hard. Like I was bullied and I struggled being an only child and being so far from family and not feeling like I could fit in anywhere. So it was interesting, but now I can look back and say like, oh yeah, I lived there for 5 years. I experienced that. I saw that part of the world and it's just, just part of my life.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of people realize some of like the challenges military kids have, moving around, going to new schools. Like you still experience everything that you would experience in a traditional school. You experience the bullying, you experience, and it's harder because you really don't feel like you fit in because you literally nobody does. And I think that's one way that we're able to form connections with other military kids because none of us fit in,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
a certain extent. We all come from somewhere else. But you do still experience so many of those challenges that
Hmm.
you just don't. I don't think a lot of the civilians or those who haven't lived the life of a military child, I don't think they realize that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You face the challenges no matter where you are. And I think, high school's hard. High
Yeah,
school's hard for a lot of people. And I just was trying to find like where I fit in and my identity. And it was a tough time, but
right.
it led me to where I am now. And I'm grateful for those experiences.
Yeah. And I think that's
Mhm.
one thing that we all look back on in this lifestyle, no matter child or spouse. It's like you dread so many parts of it, and there are so many challenges and the moving and making new friends. And if you don't like meeting new people, if you're more of an introvert, it's very challenging. Um,
Mhm.
but we look back on it and it's like, oh my gosh, like I did that. Like, you have that sense of pride and that feeling of that you actually accomplished something. And,
Mhm.
high school is tough. High school is tough no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing. And being in another country for high school, that's an added challenge onto it. You're not in the United States where, you're kind of used to it. It's like a comfort zone. You're in another country and so many things are going on and, you know, it's it's chaos to begin with.
Yeah, yeah, and being there, it's so far from like the United States, and
Yeah.
the time difference is crazy, and you can't just call family if you're, feeling like you need to talk to someone. You just feel very like isolated,
Yeah.
which I think a lot of people feel. Even if we're in the United States, sometimes we feel isolated, but
Yeah.
yeah,
It is hard because, you're even on the opposite side of the country, from, Virginia to California or something. That's 3 hours, and three
hmm,
hours makes a huge difference.
hmm,
And, Alaska or Hawaii or,
hmm,
those islands, those Pacific islands, like it makes a difference in, you know, so many different aspects, time difference. Like you can't call home, you can't just be connected to family like that. It's, crazy early hours or crazy late hours, and not everybody can, pull those off to make it
yeah,
work.
yeah. I know. You have to really figure out things on your own a lot of the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then, transitioning into that spouse like lifestyle, at least, you had somewhat of an idea of what it was like, but I think there's so many people who come into it and our military kids that are like, I don't want to be associated with a military life anymore. Like I'm
Yeah.
so done with it. And that was me. And now I'm like, no, like I experienced a military relationship and it was challenging. It had its challenges and triumphs and everything in it. But, it's so rewarding to know that you're part of something bigger, even just
Hmm.
as a spouse. You're part of something bigger. You are still sacrificing as a spouse.
Yeah. Yeah. I think growing up in the Navy, it was, we weren't as involved with that lifestyle, I think. So we never lived on a base. We didn't go to a lot of the gatherings and events. It was almost like my stepdad had just a normal job and we were just moving with him. Like
Yeah.
it was, it was different. And so I think when I got married to my husband and, got more involved with the army lifestyle, I really wanted to do all the things. Like I was like, yeah, I want to go to the groups. I want to meet the other people. I want to learn about your job and really be involved in the lifestyle now. Because I experienced it, but very differently and more limited.
Yeah, and when you're
Yeah.
going through it, it's so helpful to know that there are other people struggling right there with you and
Yeah.
experiencing the same challenges. And, my dad was reserved, so we were like about 40 minutes away from his unit is where we lived
Hmm.
in Cleveland, Ohio. There's no military base. The closest one is Wright Pat Air Force Base, and that was like 4 hours away. And so
Hmm.
I barely knew any other military kids, and they weren't my age. They weren't going through the same things I was going through. They weren't in my school. And so, that lifestyle was challenging because I would come to school crying because my dad was, deployed or he was gone, and nobody would understand. They'd be like, "Why are you crying? Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing? Like, isn't he just going to come home later today?" Um,
Yeah.
and then, moving to San Antonio when we lived on base, it was such a huge difference because I was around people who understood and who knew
Hmm.
and were facing the same challenges that I were. And, it's really that community factor. And so if you're
Hmm.
not really, you know, if you're not integrating yourself with that community and being intentional with it, it's really a challenging lifestyle to be part of because then you
Yeah.
really feel isolated and you feel alone. And you feel
Yeah.
isolated and alone no matter what. Like that's just a feeling that comes with it. But if you put
Yeah.
yourself out there, you can kind of you won't feel as isolated or alone.
Yeah. When I first married my husband, I was definitely scared to like reach out and get to know people and talk to people about what I was going through.
Hmm.
Um, but then once I did and I started opening up, I was like, oh my gosh, these people are going through the same thing. And it helped so much with meeting other moms with kids the same age and just having a coffee date or just, knowing someone that is in their husband's in the same unit. It's just, it's really helpful.
So nice to be able to just have someone that you can call who can understand and knows the lifestyle you're going through because, it's hard sometimes, I've heard to call family because your family doesn't necessarily understand, what it's like to be a military spouse and, no fault to their own. It's just the way it is. And, being able to connect with other military spouses who are moms and have kids and are moving and live away from family. It's so helpful to be able to go through that with someone else who knows and understands.
Yeah, it's so helpful. And what is interesting, the longer that you're in the military, you know, life, you end up seeing people at the same bases. Like the more that you move, you'll
Yeah.
see people like 3 years later. Oh, I knew you from this other base. And then you have friends like wherever you go, and you have support wherever you go. And that's a really cool feeling, like having friends in so many different places. Yeah.
And so when you travel, like there's really somebody there that you can go see. And that's the funnest thing is like even now as a young adult, like I can travel somewhere and say, "Hey, I'm going to be there." Like, can I come see you or can I come stay with you or can I come visit? And,
Yeah.
being able to experience another part of the country that I hadn't seen before and be able to experience it with someone that I know and a friend of mine is so fun. And then
Yeah.
like you said, you are more than likely to cross paths with someone again. That's why they say don't burn bridges in this lifestyle, because if you
Yeah.
do, you might have challenges up ahead. And,
Yeah.
um, it's so nice to be able to have that support system literally around the world then, because, there's always someone that you can call no matter where you're at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's great because you never know where you're going to end up moving to and you never know who's going to be there and you never know who has lived there before. So
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. It's a great lifestyle to be part of and you have to be really committed to be part of it, but if you are then like you said, going to those events, going to those gatherings and being part of the unit and, the FRGs and, really getting to know your spouse's unit is so important.
Yeah, it's really important. But yeah, I was going to say that I think you do have to really look for those things and go out of your way to find those things. Um, it's not always just handed to you in this life, like of being a military spouse takes a lot of I think it takes a lot of effort if you want those relationships and those experiences. You're not always going to like where you're living. Um, and you kind of have to put in the effort to make the best of it,
Yeah. Because if you don't
which
put
can
in
be
that
tough.
effort, it's how the saying that goes, you get what you get, what you give. I think
Yeah.
that's how it goes. You get what you give. So if you put in that effort, if you put in that work, then you are more than certainly, going to get that out of it. And if you
Yeah.
make that work for yourself, if you make it work for your family, then, it's going to be an incredible journey ahead.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And there's so many things that, that you can experience that are fun. There are challenges up ahead, but there are so many fun things, in the lifestyle that come with it.
Hmm.
And moving and going to new places, and while that's challenging as it is, it's so fun to do that and to experience new places and, you know, just immerse yourself into what this world has to offer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
There's so many positives to it and there's so many benefits to it. Um, and we have to sometimes find them if they're not right in front of us, but they're there.
Yeah.
And we have to remind ourselves in like the daily, struggles that is being an army family or military family, that there's still beautiful moments in it and good things about it.
Right. Because,
Yeah.
sometimes you get to a new place and you're like, I hate it here. I just want to go back.
Hmm.
I want to go somewhere else. I'm done here. Like, and you
Hmm.
still have like 2+ years, to be in
Yeah.
that spot. And so you have to make the most of it. You have to find the little hidden gems of it because they're there. They're hidden.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So my last question for you is what piece of advice would you give, to either a military child or a military spouse or even both?
Yeah. One piece. It's hard. I would say don't it's really easy to feel alone and just remember you're not alone. Like there is someone, if not multiple people out there going through the same thing, the same feelings. Um, it's don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help, because there's more than likely people out there that are happy to help you. And yeah, just remember you're not alone, and we're all going through it, and it's hard, but we're here for you.
Yeah. I think so many people are scared to reach out and scared
Yeah,
to ask for help because we all come into this lifestyle saying, we're so independent. And, it's that mindset that's kind of forced on you because you don't have anyone, um, you don't have your family, you don't have your friends that you grew up with or your friends that, you went to school with. And, you're kind of thrown into this lifestyle as a spouse. And um, just remembering that there are people going through the same thing as you. And there are tons of resources out there for kids, for spouses, for families, for service members, everyone. There are tons of resources, only you just have to find them. And
yeah,
you have
exactly.
to utilize them because they're just going to sit there if you don't. Not everything's going to come to you. You have to go to
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, it's taken me years to realize that. Like, you think that there's no help and no support sometimes, but there is. It's just sometimes harder to find, but it's there. And we're all going through this and it's hard, but you're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
As long as you can keep reminding yourself that you're not alone, that there's somebody else going through the same thing that you're going through, even if
Mhm.
they're, even if they were at another duty station with you, at a prior duty station, and, they're living on the other side of the world now, like that's the one fantastic thing about military life is you can always pick up the phone, you can always call someone,
Mhm.
they're there to listen. And even if you lose connection with them, like I lost touch with so many of my friends for like almost a decade, and they are still my best friends to this day, you
Yeah.
know? So no
Mhm.
matter how good you are at staying in touch, they're always there.
Yeah.
And social media makes it so much easier now that you can
Yeah.
just call someone, you can text them, you can, it's great.
Yeah, it is. And we're lucky to have, social media can add stress, but it's also a
Yes.
great resource for keeping in touch with people. And even if you're just seeing someone's photo and saying, oh, good for you, or congratulations, or you're just staying in touch with people throughout the years. And that's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. And, it is stressful sometimes. It is not the greatest place in the world to be all the time.
Yeah.
But, it is so helpful and so impactful for military families for, staying in touch and so many different things and literally seeing other people's kids grow up before your eyes too. So,
Yeah. I know. That's the crazy part. You see people on social media and it's like their child's grown a whole year
yeah.
since you've seen them. It's like, it's crazy.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing what it was like, being
Thank
a
you.
kid and a spouse.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to Grace of a Military Child and Life podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to give it a like, follow, and comment. Also, be sure to check out Instagram and Facebook at Grace of a Military Child and Life for more awesome content. For information on the podcast, Military Child Bigs and Littles, Go AMCL blog, or other resources, visit www.goamcl.org. You can also email me at Gracie, that's Gracie @goamcl.org with any questions or comments. To be a guest on the podcast, you can schedule it at www.goamcl.org/schedule a podcast, all one word, or contact me via social media or email. Stay tuned for the next episode where another incredible story is shared.